And they'll ask me, is there something I can do, like maybe stretch more, build my strength, or is my body just broken? And the truth is, their bodies are not broken at all. Their body is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's simply showing them that there is something in their brain that needs addressing. Welcome to the Love Your Brain podcast, the podcast designed for everyday people who are ready to hop off the negative thought hamster wheel and enjoy a less hostile environment in their own brains. Our brains are where we live our entire lives, and I'm on a mission to help people see that they have everything they need to make it a happier place to be. So join us for this episode of the Love Your Brain podcast. Let's get started. All right, today we are going to talk about the connection between our brains and our bodies. Our bodies are both a tool for our brains and a reflection of what's happening in our brains. And there's always this exchange of information going back and forth between our bodies and our brains and from our brains to our bodies. And we all know about the benefits of moving our physical bodies and how it positively impacts our brain health. We know that when we move our bodies and get our heart rate up, there's a release of endorphins and other happy chemicals, and how that can make us just feel better in our brains. And we also know how challenging our bodies physically can really help train our brain to see how capable we are of doing hard things, and how when we're physically gaining new skills, it actually improves how our brain functions. And even just how moving our body and getting our blood flowing increases the nutrients to our brains, which actually helps grow new brain cells and develop new brain connections, new neural pathways. We know all of these things about how our brains and our bodies are connected in the positive ways that they can exchange information and exchange energy. On the flip side, when our physical bodies are not doing well, we also know how that impacts our brains as well. And usually, if we're not feeling good in our physical bodies, that can affect how our brains are functioning. They can feel sluggish and foggy. We know that there can be a negative exchange in that way. But a lot of that stuff are things that we've probably heard a lot about. But the exchange that I really want to focus on today, the exchange of information that I want to focus on today, is when our brains and our emotions are affecting how our bodies operate. It's not something that I feel like is talked about enough because it's kind of an elusive thing, right? Like there's a lot of new science around it. There are new conversations happening around it, but I don't feel like it's always people's first explanation. And honestly, I think in some cases it should be. And this is a topic that I'm passionate about for a variety of reasons. One is because I am someone who helps other women strength train at a gym. I'm a trainer, and I'll share shortly here how I see that come into play. But I'm also a social worker, and I've seen how severe trauma impacts the physical health of my clients, which is something honestly no one would ever want to witness. When you see someone live through an extremely traumatic event, and then in turn you see what happens to their physical body because of that trauma they've experienced emotionally. But when you regularly engage with people who have experienced extreme and drastic traumas, you see those ramifications almost on steroids. It's something you can't ignore. It's right in your face. But because of that, and those experiences that I've had, I feel like I can also share some hope with you as well today. So, first, like I said, I want to share a bit of what I see as someone who works not just in mental health, but also in a gym, helping women to move their bodies and build strength. I work with women, some of them are in their 20s, all the way up to their 70s, helping them to learn how to lift weights safely, maintain good cardiovascular health, maintain the ability to have quick movements and prevent things like falling and being able to get up off the floor easily. And these women are daily learning how to move their bodies in really challenging ways, twisting and turning and squatting, all while carrying more than their body weight. And I think my unique perspective gives me a chance to identify something with the people I train that maybe is not entirely typical. Now, it's pretty common to work with women who have long standing restrictions to their movement. In some cases, that comes about because of physical traumas, right? Like they were maybe in a car accident and now they have a rod in their leg. Or maybe they had a stroke and they no longer have the same dexterity in one of their arms that they used to have, and now they can't hold a dumbbell anymore. Those are the types of situations that we typically encounter, and we can kind of help them understand how to do things mechanically in a different way, still get the same effect of movement, but really trying to accommodate some of those very apparent physical limitations that they have. But again, all of those situations are things we can usually easily identify and explain once the person tells you a bit about why they're limited and how they move. But for me, my experience is often a little different than your average trainer because when I see someone struggling to get a full range of motion or they keep failing in a movement, I start by asking them about it. Things like, how does that feel for you when that's happening? What do you feel in your body when that's happening? And it often starts a conversation where sometimes there is a clear story, like the examples I've shared, where maybe they had some injury happen and they just can't move in the same way anymore. But also, there are other times where there is no clear story. But the more they explain and the more I watch, I see that there is something happening under the surface. And it's unfortunately not something I can always easily articulate with them right at the gate because it's not always the appropriate venue for that. But what I can tell is happening is that something is happening in their brains that could be causing their body to not work in the way that they want. And they'll ask me, is there something I can do, like maybe stretch more, build my strength, or is my body just broken? And the truth is, their bodies are not broken at all. Their body is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And it's simply showing them that there is something in their brain that needs addressing. And what I mean by that is that there are things happening in our brains, like trauma or strong emotions, that show up in our bodies in unexpected ways. Even simple things like how, as women, our hips can really hold so much trauma we experience. I remember one time in a yoga class I was taking, we were doing a hip opener exercise. And I'm in the movement and I'm trying to open my hips. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I felt a flood of emotion come to the surface for me. I started crying uncontrollably. It was really embarrassing and I felt super weird. So I talked to the instructor after class and she explained to me how common that is for women to break down in tears during that specific hip opener movement. And she said this happens because of the emotions that can get trapped in our hips. And when we're doing the movement, it's really bringing that emotion to the surface. And it can cause us to feel things that we've had pent up for a really, really long time. And the truth is, as women, this idea of trauma being trapped in our hips is actually very common. The internet is filled with lots of explanations for this. And one really interesting one that I heard from a professional once was when I was getting a massage. The massage therapist had done a lot of research around this. And she said that as women, so much of what is vulnerable to us is in our pelvic region. And when we're under stress and we're in our fight or flight mode, our hips naturally don't feel safe being open because that would leave a very vulnerable part of our body exposed. So instead, we keep our legs tightly closed and pressed together to protect that region. And over time, this repeated tightening, it starts to limit how our hips can open. But again, that's only one part of what is probably a million explanations for hip tightness or hip pain. But even outside of how our bodies move, our brains and emotions can affect all areas of how our bodies operate. I recently met with a doctor because I was just dealing with some health issues and my body didn't feel right in some ways. And I honestly went in expecting that the doctor would maybe say, that it could be a handful of things going wrong and maybe just give me a prescription. But instead, what she told me completely floored me. She said, I think you might want to consider trying energy work. Are you kidding me? This was a medical doctor suggesting something woo woo like energy work. And if you aren't familiar, energy work would be something like Reiki or sound healing or even acupuncture. They're alternative medicines that are practiced almost in a spiritual way where you're channeling energy and really putting that energy towards another person's body to address imbalances in their energy that could be causing physical symptoms or pain. It's not honestly something that most traditional medicine doctors believe in. So it really caught me off guard. But it's honestly exactly what I needed to hear. My issue with my body was not something that really would have shown up on paper or on a blood test. It was more about the emotions I was needing to process, emotions that were bottled up in my body, and my body was responding to traumas that I'd recently experienced, and it was trying to communicate with me. Isn't that crazy how interconnected our brains and bodies are? Often, when there is something physically happening in our bodies, it could be something easily explainable, like a mechanical malfunction or an imbalance in our nutrients. But it could also be something more. It could be something that's happening emotionally that you're processing physically. Just like the women that I work with at the gym, sometimes I can see there isn't anything mechanically wrong, but there is something in their bodies that is causing them to not be able to move in the way they want. And it might not be anything that stretching or strength training is going to fix. It's going to be something that takes getting down to the root of the issue, getting to the root of maybe what's happening in their brains, maybe some trauma they experienced or emotions that they've had stored in their bodies. But their bodies are talking to them, it's telling them it needs something. Isn't that amazing? The question is, though, are we listening? Unfortunately, so many of us are just getting frustrated and feel like our bodies are failing us, when in reality, they aren't failing us at all. They're being super successful at communicating something is not right. We just aren't understanding the message. And I share this with you definitely not as a medical professional. Please do not take any of this as medical advice. But I share this with you actually to give you some hope that if your body is not working right, if it's not feeling right, that's actually amazing. Your body is trying to talk to you to let you know that what might be going on in your brain or some emotion that you're experiencing, it needs to be addressed. And that is hopeful. And there are so many things that can be done to address these things. I won't go into detail on all of those avenues today on this episode because, in all reality, what will work for you could be something that no one else has tried. Part of finding a solution is tuning in, trusting your body, and being curious. Curiosity is a concept I love because it's free. It's not forcing anything. We aren't strong arming something. We're just being curious about what the solution could be. We're being open. And that can be really exciting to discover. Just leaving that door open for your body to continue to speak to you and share with you what might be going on. And when you're open to what could happen, a lot of serendipitous things can happen. That's what happened for me when I went to the doctor. Honestly, that's not a typical situation when you go to a normal medical doctor for them to tell you that you need energy work, but that's what happened to me. Trusting your body and believing it when it's communicating with you will only allow you to build that trust with yourself more. And again, there are probably a million things out there that could be a solution for you, but your body knows best. It knows what it needs to move from pain to healing or from dysfunction to healthy function. And the truth is, once you find that solution that feels right for you, it's also going to be more effective than a solution that maybe comes from a traditional source, right? Something outside of yourself. Because your energy towards that solution makes a huge difference on how effective it can be. And how fun is it that if you listen to your body, you can follow the path with curiosity to try things and address the issue. And then when you find that solution, that thing that works for you, oh my word, what a wonderful feeling that can be that you trusted yourself to find a solution and you found it. The compounding effect of that in and itself is what builds your relationship and trust with yourself and gets it to a place where you know you can count on you. You can trust your body when it's communicating with you. And that's amazing. And now, again, I'm intentionally leaving out a lot of facts and details about the million modalities of healing available. And I'm leaving them out of this podcast today for a reason. I'm doing that because what I want you to take away is that I truly believe what is meant for you will find you if you trust you. Not trusting me and my Rolodex of solutions, that's far less valuable. But I do share with you my stories because hopefully it will be just a reminder of what's possible and to question maybe some long held beliefs about our bodies when they aren't working exactly how we want. But you are so powerful, and I believe you will find the way that is meant for you. Have a great week, guys. I hope you found something helpful here today on the Love Your Brain podcast. Maybe a laugh or a feeling of validation, or maybe just a few moments to have company while you do your laundry. Whatever you take from it, I hope you enjoyed your time and leave feeling empowered to be more you every day. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next episode, and leave a review. I'd love to hear what you think. Have a great one.